You said the money itself is not really material, it's the remedy and how that comes about.
Not material to Google itself, because Google has $100 billion cash pile. They're cash rich. But what the European Union is telling Google is that because you're breaking our antitrust rules, you not only have to pay this $5 billion fine, which is a record, but you also have to change your behavior and get rid of some of this action. The big allegation here is that Google has Android systems on 80% of the world's smartphones, most of the smartphones in Europe, and that it doesn't give consumers choice because it pre-installs their apps and their search functions on their phones. And she said that's a big problem and it violates our values in the European Union. When I pressed her on whether this was some sort of protectionist action that was coming as all the trade fight was going on, she said, yeah, we're protecting the interests of consumers, which I thought was a good line. It also is pretty consistent with some of her other actions. Just last year, they levied a more than $2 billion fine on Google for abusing its shopping dominance, prioritizing its own shopping services in terms of search results. So this really continues a long history, not just with Google, but with U.S. technology companies, John. We remember the Apple case.
Well, I mean, to me, the big deal here isn't the $5 billion fine so much as it's the remedy if in 90 days Google doesn't change. That they're saying 5% of daily sales.
Revenues,
up to 5% of daily sales. They're calling it turnover, I guess, in the release, would be the potential continuing fine. I mean, if you believe in, sort of understand the rules of the road in Europe as far as antitrust goes, this makes some sense. Look, Google, Alphabet, Google specifically in this case, Sundar Pichai is talking about, look at all of the competition that has flourished in the mobile ecosystem since Android became a thing. And if you're looking at devices, there are lots of devices. If you're looking at apps, yes, there are lots of apps that can build on top of Android. But if you're looking at operating system choice, Amazon's Fire OS was basically locked out because Google was saying, hey, if you want to use our apps on Android at all, you can't use anybody else's forked version of Android. So guys, don't even think about using Amazon's version of Android. And also, if you're trying to compete with Google in search on mobile with an Android fork, forget about it. Or even on Android, forget about it. So, you know, this is Europe's way of saying, we don't like those rules, and if you want to sell in our jurisdiction, you got to change.
Well, part of the Google counterargument is that you're not including Apple and iOS as a major competitor, which I actually pressed the commissioner on that very point. Here's what she said.
This is not about Apple. This is not about Android. This is about Google behavior, a behavior that's illegal for a dominant company because it's unlocking, locking down competition and disabling innovation and choice that we would all like to enjoy.
So she clearly feels that this is a behavioral issue, guys. One thing that I'm wondering is, does this make the United States take a harder stance against Europe, say in trade negotiations, or does it serve as a template for those that are calling for antitrust regulation in the United States against big companies like a Google or an Apple or an Amazon, you name it, because Europe is so out front on some of these decisions?
It certainly does highlight the fact that there are differences in the way the antitrust laws here are written versus the laws in Europe. One of the other things, I mean, you asked her, well, in terms of competition, isn't this just a download away in terms of being able to get a competitor's
other
app
apps, yes,
on the phone? And I thought it was really interesting when she said only 1% of users download a competing search. So that
search specifically.
Yeah.
But what other searches do we use, I guess, is some of the thing. And then she would say, well, that stifles
Bing,
innovation.
Yeah,
Bing.
Go.
All the Europeans are trying to get to Bing.
But I mean, I think back in the days of Microsoft's antitrust case, when they bundled Internet Explorer with Windows, you could download Netscape Navigator. Now, granted, Netscape was trying to charge at that point, and this completely knocked out their business model at the time. But it wasn't so much that you couldn't download something else, it was why would you? And the idea that as a dominant company, you perhaps have a different level of responsibility in the market. This one I don't see as necessarily being a U.S. company versus European company thing. One of the biggest complainants against Google when it comes to search ad placement and I guess just search placement in general is Yelp, which is a U.S. company.
And has been pretty vocal today.
Yes.
In reaction to this decision. But to a large extent, it's about almost turning back the clock because the installed base is so entrenched, right? And these are decisions that if they really wanted to change the world, should have been called on a decade ago.
So who does this benefit? I mean, it potentially benefits somebody like Samsung that already has a big critical mass in the Android ecosystem. They perhaps will feel more free to do more with their own software services and apps on the platform, and potentially an Amazon, which might want to make another run at something like these services that compete with Google's App Store, Google's, I don't know, maybe not Maps, but even the operating system itself.
Sure.
They might make another run with Fire OS, and with Europe forcing Google to change the way it does things, it might have a shot.
But I think the point is it's not even necessarily clear that it hurts Google so much. The stock is flat. It was just higher a moment ago.
Oh, it hurts Google.
You think?
Yeah.
Because they have to change their behavior and rethink the way they're going to install these apps on phones?
It opens up a flank for another powerful party, maybe an Amazon, maybe even a Facebook, if they decide to do something that encroaches on Android, either on the phone or in the Internet of Things, in the smart home. It just weakens the position that they have from which to leverage search and their mobile dominance into the next thing.
Investors don't see it today.
Exactly.
That's why they have us.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.